Hello lovely people and welcome back to a new video. Today I am going to be talking about my favorite books of 2021. If you're new here, hello, my name is Noah. I'm a bookish and lifestyle vlogger born and raised and still based in New York City. So if that sounds like of any interest to you, I would absolutely love it if you would stick around until the end and subscribe if you so please. I'm still getting over a bit of a cough, so if my nose sounds stuffy, it is a little bit, and I have a bit of a dry cough, but I tested a bunch of times and I've been testing negative, so that's great. Here I just pulled off my shelf my 2021 bullet journal, in which I keep like all of my bookish records and stuff like that for the most part if I don't have it on Goodreads. So I will be looking down at it a little bit. I do have a stack of books next to me, as well as a short stack of honorable mentions. I don't know if I can hold it up, but this is just half of it. We're just gonna go through the honorable mentions first. Let me count how many I have. Okay, actually it's 12, which I thought there would be more. This list does have oh fuck, I forgot to pull some off the shelf. There's probably going to be more than 12 because there are some series on here. In any case, in no particular order, let's just get started. Out of the 3 honorable mentions, we're just gonna go Jade City by Fonda Lee, which I read in reading Mina's favorite books, and I was surprised with how much I like this. There's a bit of water damage, and I do need to continue this series. I know that the last book in the trilogy, I believe, came out in November, late November, early December. Fantasy is not a genre that I read very much of, but I very much enjoyed this world. Next up, we have Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, which was hyped up at the beginning of the year, and it took me a while to pick this up because, as you see, I got it off of Book of the Month, and from the sample that they showed, it was written in second person, which I do not like, so I didn't pick it up, but everybody had been raving about it. It was so true. It was such a heartwarming, gorgeous romance and a journey of self-discovery, and I really enjoyed stories like that. I really enjoy stories like that. And this cover is just absolutely gorgeous. She reminds me of Naomi, of Osaka Naomi. She's so pretty. Reminding me that I again forgot to put on lipstick, but it's fine. The last book that I have is Seeing Ghosts, a memoir by Kat Chow that my friend Samantha got me. We were reading this together, buddy reading. I need to actually respond in a letter to her and tell her that I finished this. Any book that talks about grief or writes it really well if it's fictional is one that holds a very special place in my heart. Having gone through grief myself, it's not always going to be represented exactly in the way that I felt it. Of course, everybody experiences it very differently. Being able to like read about someone who kind of like gets it, and also being able to talk to my friend about grief really openly, something that we had never done before, or even that I had done before with another person. This book being able to bring up those conversations in my life, I'm very appreciative of. This one definitely is going to make that list. Thank you, Samantha, for getting this for me. I love you. So in no particular order, let's just get into it. The first book on the top of the mass pile that I have next to me is Loveless by Alice Oseman. It is a journey of self-discovery. Georgia has never been in love. She's never kissed anyone. She's had no experience, and she goes to college thinking that she needs to do these experiences and feel these things that her friends do, and she wants to find love. It's sort of her being uncertain about those feelings and figuring out maybe that she might be ARO or ACE, somewhere on that spectrum. Again, like I said with Honey Girl, this is just a journey of self-discovery, which made this all that more special. I'm trying to find the other copy, that other book that I thought about this, which brings me to my second book also, which is Felix Ever After by Kaysen Callender. Similarly, it's about self-discovery for Felix. He is a trans boy. There's someone who is dead naming him and outing him, so there's a lot of trigger warnings for that. There's also this situation of a love triangle catfish situation, which is kind of funny. Both of these characters are trying to figure themselves out and see who they really are, and if people are going to accept them for that, if they themselves are going to accept themselves for that. I just found it so heartwarming and beautiful. Taking a little bit of a turn, we're going into adult romance smut. This is Actor Age Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, the last installation in the Brown Sisters trilogy. Everyone has read this here on BookTube, and it is so funny. The smut is written very, very well, and Talia Hibbert is just so comedic, and it just comes out very well in her writing. I also really liked Eve so much. She's so sweet, and as the youngest sister, I found that relatable. Eve Brown, as I said, she's the youngest sister, and and coming from a rich family and with a trust fund, she kind of never really found a career that stuck and has been bouncing around from job to job until one day her parents are like, we're gonna cut you off, you need to find a job. She applies to a bed and breakfast and then begrudgingly gets hired, if I'm using that correctly, and ends up hitting her new boss with her car. And because Jacob, the love interest, and her boss becomes injured, she's helping him run his B&B as well as being the chef there. Just the whole hate to love situation, Jacob being this uptight boss and Eve being so carefree and silly. Just that romance was so much fun to watch, to like read and see it unravel. It was so funny, especially because this is in close quarters too, which is one of the romance tropes that I love. It was just an absolute joy. Next up is a horror, which is very big for me. If you've been watching videos on my channel, you'll know about it. This is The Troop by Nick Cutter. I read this for reading Gabby's favorite books, and this was a huge shock. Like, Gabby and I do have a very similar reading taste in terms of thrillers, and I hadn't read much horrors, but the book that got her into horror got me into horror. Not that I've read a lot. Troop of boys in Canada who go, it's sort of like the Boy Scouts, and they go on a wilderness trip on a remote island, I think, for the weekend. There is this intruder there who has a virus or something, and it's about that going around. It is absolutely creepy. There is so much nasty body horror, and their boys and the troop are trying to survive that. It is so disgusting. Also, trigger warnings for animal abuse. It was just really gross in like the best way, because I gave this 4.5 stars. I docked it because of how nasty it was, but honestly this really could have been 5. Just how brilliantly the atmosphere was written. For that sole reason, like, this makes it onto my favorites of 2021. We Are Not Free by Tracy Chee. This hits home for me. This is a YA story following 14 teenagers during World War II in America while the Japanese Americans are being placed into internment camps. It's a lot of characters. It follows each of them and their mindset while being imprisoned and them grappling with their identity of being Japanese American and then Japanese American with a hyphen. As a Japanese American myself, this is a part of my history. I know that the author was pulling from her own family history and listening to her family members and including some photos as well of what it was like to be in these camps. Being able to resonate with these characters was a lot for me. I read this in February. Like 2 months later, the Asian hate crimes in America were happening due to COVID. I really loved this story, and seeing all of them grapple with their identity and like seeing that representation of myself and my feelings of feeling like I'm not American enough in a book really made me feel seen. Next up is a book that I also read for another Reading a YouTuber's Favorite Book series, and this is Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I read this for obviously Lala's favorite books. I need to get on to reading the rest of this series. The only thing is, because I bought the UK edition, because I think I bought this off of Book Depository, I feel like I need to get the UK editions for the rest of the series. I don't really know how to explain this, but Blue has been told that she is going to kiss her true love and they'll die or something like that. Like, they'll die if she kisses them. And then she meets these boys, she calls them the Raven Boys, from the nearby like prep school, and them like figuring out magic in their town or something. Yes, I have read the book. It seems like I didn't, but I just didn't expect to fall in love with it the way that I did, because Lala and I have very different reading tastes, and she likes really weird shit and I don't, I think. So I just really fell in love with like the journey, the adventure of like figuring out the magic in the town. It really, towards the end, it was boosting up for me. Blue is such an interesting character, and you wouldn't think that she would like really fit into the boys, the Raven Boys, but she somehow does. This is why I didn't want to do this video, because I feel like I'm not explaining this very well. I mean, this book has been out for so long, and I feel like everyone has read this on BookTube, but it wasn't until BookTube that I found out about this book. Next up is the only graphic novel on here, but this is The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. I actually, like with We Are Not Free, borrowed this from the library and then went out to get my own copy. This is just so beautiful. So this is about Tien, a refugee in America. The red parts are Tien's story, and then the blue parts are these Vietnamese fairy tales. Tien is trying to figure out how to come out to his parents or his mother, who is also struggling as a refugee. The fairy tales are stories that his mother would tell him. Some of them I recognize, like ones that I have heard in America in English, but they're sort of like the Vietnamese twist of them, which is really, really interesting. The art style is really cute. This is also sort of a journey of self-discovery. Tien being able to talk to his mom, who is also just grieving for herself, for her family in Vietnam that she had to leave behind. It was just a sweet story. It was like a straight up 5 stars for me. I just loved it. I don't know, I think I just have a thing for books about self-discovery. If you have any, please let me know. I also liked at the end that the author would show his art style and explaining like the little fairy tales that were told in here. This one I was also pretty late on, but The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. If I'm not interested in something at first and then it gets super hyped, I still don't fall into the hype until pretty late. So I got this as for free because it was the book of the year or the book of the month. They do their own sort of like Goodreads awards type thing, and then if you pick it at the end of the year, you get it for free. So that's the only reason why I got it, but I ended up giving it 4.5, I think, and I get why it was like really, really beautifully written and it's poetic, but Addie LaRue is destined to be forgotten. She makes a deal with the devil and she lives forever, but no one ever remembers her once she like leaves the room or something. So every day she lives this new sad adventure, and everyone has said that this book was way too long, but I really kind of liked the length of it and I understood why it needed to be that long. It was like an interesting concept at first, but then it just got so sad because she's living like hundreds of years without anybody but the devil remembering her, and her family has like long forgotten her. So it was really sad. I really love the writing style. What Lies Between Us by John Mars. This is on here because of how shocked I was by the twist. Like, it was just so amazingly executed. This is following Nina and Maggie, and they live in the same house and they have dinner together. They're roommates, except that Maggie has done something to Nina that can't be forgiven and she's paying the price. I think that's all I need to say about it. Just the twists and turns, there were many. Each time I was like jaw dropped. I mean, yeah, I had some inklings, but like the way that it was written, I was just so excited the whole time, and I want somebody else to experience that. I didn't have that great of a time of reading John Mars' other book, The Minders, but this was fabulous. The next book is actually one that I also read for another favorites video for reading Nina's, and this is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This definitely needed to make the list. This is about Rin, and she is a war orphan and gets into this academy that is like impossible to get into, and she gets like full marks and everybody is impressed and shocked and a little bit like unsure about her because she is a war orphan, and typically the people who get in and get really high scores are the rich, and she is not. So she is this peasant girl who gets into the elite like military school, being targeted by all the rich people because of how poor she is, and turns out she has this power as a shaman to fight the war and save her people. And this is also a trilogy that I need to continue. The reason why I needed this to be on here was because, like I said, I'm not someone who reads a lot of fantasy, and typically the first book of fantasies that I read are 3 stars because it takes me a while to get into the story. This world building was so spectacular. I really kind of fell into it right away, and Rin is a character that I don't necessarily like love 100%. I definitely see like the really bad parts of her and the really real parts of her, but I enjoyed seeing all of that. This was just so amazing, and it took me way too long to get to this. I know that a lot of people rave about this. I don't think I've seen a single person say like a bad thing about this novel. We're dwindling down the list here. This was my November favorite, but this is False Witness by Karen Slaughter. This I think is the second book that I've read by her, but I know just how much this author writes about like really brutal issues. So there's a lot of trigger warnings for child molestation, child rape, child abuse, rape, drug abuse. This is following a lawyer, Lee, and she is a defense attorney and she's working at this prestigious firm in Atlanta, and she has to defend someone accused of a few counts of rape. She's been specifically appointed to this defendant. He wanted her to defend him, and turns out that they know each other, and she's like running from her past as well. She's a little bit of a thicker one, but this was just really heavy. I read it in a vlog, and it hit me a lot harder than I thought that it would. The way that it was written, just there were a lot of jaw-dropping moments, and the ending was just worked out really perfectly. And yeah, I suck at talking about books. I guess the second one gets an honorable mention, but it's Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This also was a series that I had never heard of until BookTube. I don't think I even saw this in my library in middle school or like people talking about it, but also I like wasn't a fantasy reader back then either. These are the only 2 that I have read so far. But this is the second one, right? Oh my god. Wait, can we stop? I just really fell into the world, not in the same way that I did with the Poppy War, but I really liked it. This is a lot more fantastical, I would say, with like different creatures. I feel like I don't even need to talk about because everyone has talked about this, but because this was like my first introduction to Sarah J Maas and everybody's already talking about like other books and her newer books, I don't know how they're all connected or not. Somebody please educate me. I can't wait to get into this world as well. It's been a while because I read this in January of last year. Just even getting back into this and seeing all these new things that are happening and this new world opening up was really cool. And because it's a longer series, that should be interesting because I haven't read like a long fantasy series in a while. I think they've only been duologies and trilogies, so I'm interested to see where Sarah J Maas is going to take the rest of the world. Next up is a YA thriller, I think. This is Tiffany D. Jackson's Grown. First of all, this cover is just so immaculate and beautiful. This also requires some trigger warnings of sexual assault. This is following Enchanted, and she wakes up with blood on her hands. She has no idea how she got there, what happened. She is trying to break into the R&B world. I think she's like 17, so she definitely needs her parents' consent, but getting into that world can get really messy. I thought this was really powerful of a story for YA also, because to show that like it's not just an adult issue, like these are happening. And I don't think I've read a book about the music industry or like breaking into the music industry except like when it's about substance abuse, like drug abuse, but this like hiding about all of these young artists that are up and coming, but you know, they're treated like adults right away, and it's not always this pretty glamorous story and fame that we might think that it is. And it was really tough and scary. Nobody was believing Enchanted about what was going on, and she was the victim, and yet people were kind of suspecting her and being really awful, and it was showing this like really harsh reality of these sexual assault cases in a YA story. So it's having this really tough conversation and examining the music industry. It was a tough read, but it was like a really awesome introduction into Tiffany D. Jackson. Second to last, we have Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. This is also YA, which is interesting because I kind of hate YA sometimes because of how childish it seems. It's like reads a lot younger than it should. This is sort of like Princess Diaries. Izumi finds out who her father is, and turns out he is the crown prince of Japan, making her a princess, and she is invited by her father to visit Japan and stay with them for some time to meet everybody for the country to welcome the long lost princess. She's kind of being caught between this being like regular Izumi and Princess Izumi, but also the American Izumi and Japanese Izumi. And much like We Are Not Free, this had me feeling really seen. She is, I think she's Sansei or Nisei, so she's second generation or third generation American. Izumi did feel a little bit more lost because she doesn't speak Japanese or really celebrated any of her culture because it was just her and her mom without any extended family. And being alone in a new place, she just felt really unwelcome. I liked being able to see her bloom in this and find herself. Kind of following her along in Japanese culture was fun also because I haven't seen my extended family since COVID started. Like obviously I have not been traveling abroad. Being able to like live vicariously through Izumi discovering these new places was really fun because she does visit Kyoto where my family is from. Coda is probably gonna say saving the best for last. This entire series, all 24 books of Slam Dunk by Inoue Takehiko, is making it onto my favorites of 2021. This entire series is my boyfriend's favorite. It's a manga series that I read in Japanese, and it's following a high school basketball team, which sounds really generic, but it's just a really long story about perseverance. This school was the underdog the entire time, which I definitely have a soft spot for underdogs. This isn't the first book that I gave 5 stars to, but just this whole, and I didn't give every single book 5 stars, but this whole series just, I felt really gratified reading it and like being able, again, following them on their journey, them being the underdog, coming higher than anybody thought they could. This character, the main character himself, his name is Sakuragi. He wasn't a basketball player at all, and he is sort of this natural born player that just needed to hone on into his skills and being taught. And seeing how far he came into basketball for all the wrong reasons, and he's just this silly, really idiotic character that's kind of lovable, but seeing him grow as an individual as well was really awesome. I wish there was more to this series, and I know that there was a TV show for this, but it's like so 90s that I can't even watch it. I feel like they could totally remake it. He said that this is a series that I would definitely like go back to and read again and again, and I can definitely see myself doing that. It's been translated into a bunch of different languages, because honestly it was just such a fun time. I didn't think I would like the series as much as I did, and look at me now. Those are all the books that I enjoyed reading this year. I hope you enjoyed. This is why I only talk about books like in the moment during reading vlogs when I'm actually reading them, because I feel like I don't remember them enough to talk about them very well. I have very selective memory, but these are all books that will hold a special place in my heart for my 2021 self. So let me know if you have read them or which ones you plan on reading, like which ones on your TBR, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!